Hello and welcome to the program. I am Suren. As we all know, the human imagination is endless and is a very important characteristic of a living, breathing, intelligent, viable being with such a wonderful attribute. This alone has given man the ability to invent, create, and establish himself as the modern humans of today. But it has also become their downfall in many other ways. We popularly love to think that this characteristic of man on earth made him think inventively. Further, and believing that he is the only one capable of imagination. Knowing also that when something can be imagined, that has to be based on some truth for man to be able to think, even to imagine the things he can do. Among his well-known attributes within his intelligence and imaginations, he is capable of building dwellings to live in, roads to travel on, vehicles to take him to and fro, even to float, dive, and fly within his own planet and beyond. He is capable to find ways to cure his health-related issues and inventing all kinds of equipment to assist himself in many ways, even to destroy his own kind, let alone cook his own food, create works of art, and more, as well as capable of overcoming his conflicts and building a very advanced civilization. Who wouldn't agree? However, everything he is skilled of doing does not remain in the imaginative area alone, for he truly is capable of going even further. As we discover, not all imaginations of men are simply imaginations, and often his discoveries and thought patterns can lead his imaginative processes to invent in the science fantasy styles, and his capacity within his mind self constantly increases. I would like to liberally claim him being influenced, if not guided, by the entire intelligent cosmos, as long as he is able to think without disruption to his physical brain. His mind will always remain active, viable, and intact. A smaller but important part of the greater universe. That's what he is. However, man has also dreams of where he may originate from, not necessarily from his current home or current home world, but from elsewhere in the universe. We can't argue. And that takes us to the world of the extraterrestrial existence. Let's examine. Extraterrestrial life, or alien life if you like, refers to the life originating outside the planet Earth, ranging from microcosmics or microorganisms to potentially intelligent civilizations like us. So far, as generally known, no definitive proof exists, although many scientists strongly believe that it likely exists due to billions of stars and exoplanets in the galaxy. Astrobiology and programs like SETI search or utilize tools, the Hubble and James Webb space telescopes, to detect biosignatures. As it is often explained, scientists search for potential life on other planets. Now, are there any known or assumed aspects of alien life science needs to be concerned about? Where should we look? Where our focus needs to be at? Are there any habitable zones where liquid water can exist by multitudes of stars, including the planet Mars and icy moons like Europa and Enceladus? We have so far no idea about how they might look like, and all we can imagine is that alien life would depend on its environment. It could be easier to follow this notion in our imaginations if it could be as simple as bacteria or even complex creatures resembling, say, deep-sea organisms on planet Earth. The search for evidence. Consider, astronomers have found thousands of exoplanets and analyzed their atmospheres for fingerprints of life, such as oxygen and methane. Intelligence and communication. The Drake equation, if you have heard of, know about, is used to estimate the potential number of intelligent civilizations, like us. Scientists continue to look for signals, though none have been confirmed to this day. UFOs or UAPs, or unidentified aerial phenomena, are currently studied by scientists, but reports lack the evidence to definitively prove the history of extraterrestrial visitation to Earth, but the feelings thereof can still be detected in ancient art and other olden works of art. We still question why we have not so far found them, referring to a significant paradox, which the physicists try to uncover the questioned issue as to why, given the high probability of life that may exist elsewhere, we have not encountered any evidence of other civilizations. Possible explanations include the immense distances between stars make travel or even communication to be unlikely. We do not know that the civilization we are familiar with may be rare or short-lived, or life may be largely microbial rather than intelligent. The future of discovery. Some experts believe, based on rapid advancements in astronomy, that evidence of extraterrestrial life could be found within the next 10 to 20 years, and this is only an assumption. Extraterrestrial life, or aliens, that originate from another world, says Wikipedia, rather than on Earth, no extraterrestrial life has yet been scientifically or conclusively detected. Such life might range from simple forms like prokaryotes to intelligent beings, possibly ranging from civilizations that might be far more or far less advanced than humans. The Drake equation speculates about the existence of sapient life elsewhere in the universe. The science of the history of life is known as astrobiology. Speculation about inhabited worlds beyond Earth, they expect to go as far as the antiquity. Early Christian writers, including Augustine, discussed such ideas from thinkers like Epicurus or Epicurus about countless worlds existing within the vast universe. Pre-modern writers typically assumed extraterrestrial worlds were inhabited by living beings. For instance, William Forlong in the 15th century acknowledged the possibility that Jesus could have visited extraterrestrial worlds to redeem their inhabitants. In 1440, Nicholas of Cusa suggested that Earth was a brilliant star and theorized that all celestial bodies, even the Sun, could host life. Descartes wrote that there were no means to prove the stars were not inhabited by intelligent creatures, but their existence was a matter of speculation. In comparison to the life-abundant Earth, the vast majority of interest in solar and extrasolar planets and moons are being considered as having harsh surface conditions and atmospheric chemistry, or even lack of an atmosphere. However, there are many extreme and chemically harsh ecosystems on Earth that do support some forms of life, and there are often hypotheses about them to be the signs and origins of life on Earth. Examples include within life surrounding hydrothermal vents, acidic hot springs and lakes, as well as halophiles and the deep biosphere. Since the mid-20th century, researchers have searched for extraterrestrial life and intelligence. Solar system studies focus on Venus, Mars, Europa, and Titan, while exoplanet discoveries now total 6,022 confirmed planets in 449 systems as of October 2025. Depending on the category of research, methods ranging from analysis of telescope and specimen data to the radios used to detect and transmit interstellar communication. Interstellar travel remains largely hypothetical, with only the Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 probes confirmed to have entered the interstellar medium. Keep that in mind for a moment. The concept of extraterrestrial life, especially the intelligent life, has greatly influenced today's culture and fiction. A key debate centers human history of exploiting other societies. During most of their stellar evolution, stars normally combine hydrogen nuclei to make helium nuclei by stellar fusion, and the competitively lighter weight of helium allows the star to release extra energy. The process continues until the star uses all of its available fuel, with the speed of consumption being related to the size of the star. During their last stages, stars start combining helium nuclei to form carbon nuclei. The largest stars are known to further combine carbon nuclei to create oxygen and silicon, oxygen into neon and sulfur, and so on until iron is produced. Ultimately, the star blows much of its content back into the stellar medium, where it would join clouds that would eventually become new generations of stars and planets. Many of those materials contain the components of life on Earth. As this process takes place in all over the universe, and materials are ubiquitous in the cosmos and not a rarity from the actual solar system. Earth is a very special planet in the solar system, a planetary system formed by a star at the center, namely the Sun, and the objects that orbit it, namely the other planets, moons, asteroids, and comets. The Sun is part of the Milky Way galaxy. The Milky Way galaxy is a part of the local group, a galaxy group that is in turn becomes a part of the Laniakea, the supercluster. The entire universe is composed of all the similar structures in existence. The immense distances between celestial objects are difficult for studying the extraterrestrial life. Having said that, so far humans have only set foot on the moon and set robotic probes into other planets and moons in the solar system. Although probes can withstand conditions that may be lethal to humans, the distances cause time delays. The New Horizons took 9 years after launch to reach Pluto. No probe has ever reached extrasolar planetary systems. The Voyager 2 left the solar system at a speed of 50,000 kilometers an hour. If it headed towards the Alpha Centauri, the closest one to Earth at 4.4 light years, it would reach it in 100,000 years. Under current technology, such amounts of combined matter other than stars and gas clouds, and it plays no role in interstellar evolution of stars and planets. It is probably why it was not taken into account by astrobiology. There is an area around any star known as the circumstellar habitable zone, or Goldilocks zone, where water may be at the right temperature to exist in liquid form, at the planetary surface, that is. This area is neither too close to the star, where water would become steam, not too far away, where water would be frozen as ice. However, although useful as an approximation, planetary habitability is complex and defined by several factors. Being in the habitable zone is not enough for a planet not to have liquid water because of the conditions of its atmosphere. Jovian planets, or gas giants, are not considered habitable, even if they orbit close enough to their stars as hot Jupiters, for example, due to crushing atmospheric pressures. The actual distances for the habitable zones vary according to the type of star and even the solar activity of each specific star influencing the local habitability. The type of star also defines the time in which the habitable zone will be occupied or will exist, as its presence and limits will change along with the star's stellar evolution. During a period of about 7 million years, from about 10 to 17 million years after the so-called Big Bang, the background temperature as it was being considered between 373 and 1270 K, 100 and 400 Celsius. Avi Loeb in 2014 speculated that primitive life might, in principle, have appeared during this window, which he called the habitable epoch of the early universe. As we also discover in the scientific explanations, life on Earth is quite ubiquitous across the planet and has adapted over time to almost all of the available environments in it. Extremophiles and deep biosphere thrive at even the most hostile ones. As a result, it is inferred that life in other celestial bodies may be equally adaptive. However, the origin of life remains unrelated to its ease of adaptation and may have stricter requirements. A celestial body, on the other hand, may not have any life on it, even if it were habitable. Likelihood of existence of life in the cosmos beyond Earth has never been truly observed, but it is expected. The hypothesis of ubiquitous extraterrestrial life relies on three main ideas. The first one, the size of the universe, which allows plenty of planets to have a similar habitability to Earth, and the age of the universe gives enough time for a long process analog to the history of Earth to happen there. The second is the substance that makes life, such as carbon and water, are ubiquitous in the universe. The third is that the physical laws are universal, which means that the forces that would facilitate or prevent the existence of life would be the same as on Earth. According to this argument, made by scientists such as Carl Sagan and Stephen Hawking, it would be improbable for life not to exist somewhere else other than Earth. The argument is embodied in the Copernican principle, which states that Earth does not occupy a unique position in the universe, and the mediocrity principle, which states that there is nothing special about life on Earth. Other authors consider instead that life in the cosmos, or at least multicellular life, may actually be rare. The rare Earth hypothesis maintains that life on Earth is possible because of a series of factors that range from its location in the galaxy and the configuration of the solar system to local characteristics of the planet, and that it is unlikely that another planet simultaneously meets all such requirements. Think about it. The proponents of these hypotheses consider that very little evidence suggests the existence of extraterrestrial life, and that at this point it is just a desired result and not a reasonable scientific explanation from any gathered data. Drake equation in 1961. Now, astronomer and astrophysicist Frank Drake devised the Drake equation as a way to simulate scientific dialogue at a meeting on the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, or SETI, S-E-T-I. The Drake equation is a probabilistic argument used to estimate the number of active, communicative extraterrestrial civilizations in the Milky Way galaxy. The Drake equation has proved controversial. Although it is written as a math equation, none of its values were known at the time, although some values may eventually be measured. Others are based on social sciences and not by their nature. Based on observations from the Hubble Space Telescope, there are 2 trillion galaxies in the observable universe. It is estimated that at least 10% of all stars have a system of planets. In other words, there are 6.25 times 10 over 18 zeros followed the stars with planets orbiting them in the observable universe. Even if it is assumed that only 1 out of 1 billion of these stars having planets supporting life, there would be some 625 billion life supporting planetary systems in the observable universe. A 2013 study based on results from the Kepler spacecraft estimated that the Milky Way consists or contains at least as many planets as it does stars, resulting in 100 to 400 billion exoplanets. The nebula hypothesis that explains the formation of the solar system and other planetary systems would suggest that those can have several configurations, and not all of them may have rocky planets within habitable zone, like our Earth. What about biochemical bases? Hypothetical types of biochemistry, if exterior life exists, that is, as it is known today, it could range from simple microorganisms and multicellular organisms similar to animals or planets, to complex ones wherein the alien intelligence is similar to humans. When scientists talk about extraterrestrial life, they must be considering all those types. Although it is possible that extraterrestrial life may have other configurations, and so the scientists use a hierarchy of life forms from Earth for simplicity, as it is the only one known to exist, as far as we know. The first basic requirement for life is an environment with non-equilibrium thermodynamics, which means that the thermodynamic equilibrium must be broken by a source of energy. The traditional sources of energy in the cosmos are the stars, such as for life to exist on Earth, which depends on the energy of the sun. However, there are other alternative energy sources, such as volcanoes, plate tectonics, and hydrothermal vents, as on Earth, as we know. There are ecosystems on Earth and deeper areas of the ocean that do not receive sunlight and take energy from, shall we say, black smokers instead. Magnetic fields and radioactivity have also been proposed as source of energy, although they would be less efficient ones. Life on Earth requires water in a liquid state as a solvent in which biochemical reaction can take place. It is highly unlikely that biogenesis, a process, can start within a gaseous or solid medium. The atomic speeds, either too fast or too slow, make it difficult for specific ones to meet and start chemical reactions. A liquid medium, however, allows the transport of nutrients and substances required for metabolism. Sufficient quantities of carbon and other elements, along with water, might enable the formation of living organisms on terrestrial planets with the right kind of chemical makeup and temperatures ranging similar to that of Earth. Life based on ammonia is a possibility, but rather than water has been suggested as an alternative, though this solvent appears less suitable than water. It is also conceivable that there are forms of life whose solvent is a liquid hydrocarbon, such as methane, ethane, or propane. Another unknown aspect of potential extraterrestrial life would be the chemical elements that would compose it. Life on Earth is largely composed of carbon, but that could be otherwise, because there could be indeed other hypothetical types of biochemistry. We don't know. A replacement for carbon would need to be able to create complex molecules and cellular information required for evolution and be freely available in the medium. To create DNA, RNA, or a close analog, such as elements should be able to bind its atoms with many others, creating complex but stable molecules. It should be able to create at least 3 covalent bonds, 2 for making long strings, and at least a third to add new links and allow for diverse information. Only 9 elements meet this requirement: boron, nitrogen, phosphorus, arsenic, antimony 3 bonds, carbon, silicon, germanium, and more bonds in abundance. Carbon, nitrogen, and silicon are the most abundant ones in the universe, far more than the others. On Earth's crust, the most abundant of those elements is silicon. In the hydrosphere, it is carbon, and the atmosphere, it is carbon and nitrogen. Silicon, however, has disadvantages of carbon. The molecules formed with silicon atoms are less stable and more vulnerable to acids, oxygen, and light. An ecosystem of silicon-based life forms would require very low temperatures, high atmospheric pressure, and atmosphere devoid of oxygen and a solvent other than water. Harsh environmental conditions on Earth, yet harboring life, is another subject we should consider, which is common knowledge that the conditions on other planets in the solar system, in addition to the many galaxies is outside of the Milky Way galaxy, there are very harsh and seem to be too extreme conditions to harbor any type of life. The environmental conditions on these planets can have intense UV radiation paired with extreme temperatures, lack of water, and much more than that can lead to conditions that do not seem to favor the creation or maintenance of extraterrestrial life. Planetary habitability in the solar system is another subject. The solar system has a wide variety of planets, dwarf planets, and moons, and each one is studied for its potential to host life. Each one has its own specific conditions that may benefit or harm life. The only life forms found are those from Earth. What we so far know is that no external intelligence other than humans exists or has ever existed within the known solar system. It's been pointed out that it would be unlikely to find large ecosystem as they would have already been detected by now. The inner solar system is likely devoid of life. Venus is still of interest to astrobiologists, as it is a terrestrial planet that probably was likely to be similar to Earth in its early stages and developed in a different way. There is a greenhouse effect. The surface is the hottest in the solar system. Sulfur acid clouds, all surface liquid water is gone, and it has a thick carbon dioxide atmosphere with huge pressure. Comparing both helps to understand the precise differences that led to be beneficial or harmful conditions for life as we know of. And despite the conditions against the life on Venus, there are suspicions that microbial life forms may still survive in high altitude clouds. Mars is a cold and almost airless desert planet, inhospitable to life. However, recent studies revealed that running water on Mars used to be quite abundant, forming rivers, lakes, and perhaps even oceans. Mars may have been habitable back then, and also we need to consider that life on Mars may have been impossible. But when the planetary cores ceased to generate a magnetic field, solar winds removed the vital amounts of the atmosphere, and the planet became vulnerable to solar radiation. Ancient life forms may still have left fertilized remains, and microbes may still survive deep underground there. Although the giant planets themselves are highly unlikely to have life, there is much hope to find it on moons orbiting those planets. Europa is one of them, from the Jovian system, as a subsurface ocean below a thick layer of ice can meet the requirements, and Callisto also have subsurface oceans. But life is less likely in them, because water is sandwiched between layers of solid ice. Europa would have compacted between the ocean and the rocky surface, which may help the chemical reactions. It may be difficult to dig so deep in order to study those oceans. Insulators and a tiny moon of Saturn with another subsurface ocean may not need do, as it releases water to space in eruption columns. The space probe could fly inside one of these, but could not make a full study because NASA did not expect this phenomenon and did not equip a probe to study ocean water. Still detected complex organic molecules, salts, evidence of hydrothermal activity, hydrogen, and methane need to be considered. The science that studies life in the universe, both on Earth and elsewhere, is called astrobiology. With the study of Earth life, the only known form of life astrobiology seeks to study is how life starts and evolves, and the requirements for its continuous existence. This helps to determine what to look for when searching for life in other celestial bodies. This is a complex area of study and uses the combined perspectives of several scientific disciplines, such as astronomy, biology, chemistry, geology, geography, and atmospheric sciences. The scientific search for external life is being carried out both directly and indirectly. As of 19th of March 2026, there are 6,150 confirmed exoplanets in more than 4,000 planets in those systems. Other planets and moons in the solar system hold the potential for hosting primitive life, such as microorganisms. As of 8th of February 2021, and updated status of studies considering the possible detection of life forms on Venus via phosphine, and on Mars the methane was reported. There is a certain belief in alien visitation to Earth, and research fellow in philosophy ethics at the King's College London, Tony Milligan, says the idea that aliens may have visited the Earth is becoming increasingly popular. Around a fifth of UK citizens believe Earth has been visited by extraterrestrials, and an estimated 7% believe that they have seen a UFO. The figures are much higher in the US, and it's still rising. And there are people who believe that there are so many sightings offering proof to alien life and which truly increased from 20% in 1996 to about 34% in 2022. This seems to be a very paradoxical or even slightly paradoxical belief, and yet we have no scientific evidence that the aliens existed, although there is so much more to be known. Given the vast distances between star systems, it seems odd that we had only to learn about them from such a visit. However, the coverage for aliens may be more likely to come from signals received from faraway worlds, and the belief is rising to the extent that even the politicians, at least in the US, feel that they have to respond to this. The disclosure of information about UAPs rather than the ones from the Pentagon has got a lot of information by parties giving attention, and much of it plays upon familiar anti-elites or anti-elites that both parties have been ready to use. The truth is believed to involve sightings, abductions, and supposedly the reverse engineering of alien technology. We don't know. Nothing is claimed. There is a belief in cover-up and is much higher than the belief in alien visitations. Even Jimmy Carter promised a documenting disclosure during his presidential campaign back in 1979 or 76. So many other issues have happened ever since, and now the simplest explanation is that even he claimed that he has seen illusions. Clinton suggested she wanted to open Pentagon files as much as she could during her presidential campaign against Donald Trump. Trump suggested he would need to think about whether it was possible to declassify the Roswell documentation, for instance. The most prominent current advocate of document of disclosure is the Democratic Senate leader Chuck Schumer, revealing some UAP records was sponsored by 3 Republican senators. Pentagon disclosure began during the early stages of Joe Biden's term of office, but the background noise, as the author says, does not seem to go away. Of course, this is ultimately encouraging the conspiracy theories, which could quite easily undermine trust in democratic institutions. Too much background noise about UFOs and UAPs can also get in the way of legitimate science communication about the possibility of finding microbial extraterrestrial life. Astrobiology, the science dealing with such matters, as far as effective publicity, machined and ufology, History Channel, owned by Disney, delivers shows about the ancient aliens. In fact, this show seems to be now in its 20th season, and this channel has about 13.8 million subscribers, whereas the NASA's Astrobiology channel has hardly 20,000 subscribers. As we read, science seems to find itself badly outnumbered by entertainment repackaged as factual. Alien visitation narratives have also repeatedly tried to hijack and overwrite the history of indigenous people. NASA and space science community seemed to support efforts such as the Native Skywatchers initiative set up by indigenous Ojibwe Lakota communities. Indeed, there is a real and extensive network of indigenous scholarship about these issues. It seems to promise a far higher profile for indigenous history in return for the mission together of genuine indigenous stories about life arriving from much disguised fictional tales about UFOs. The modern alien visitation narrative emerged out of indigenous communities. It emerged in part as a way of consideration for conspiracy-minded thinkers in Europe, torn apart by racism to explain how complex urban civilizations in places like South America could have existed prior to European settlement. Think about it. If all of this statement in its own box, the author writes, an entertaining fiction, then matters would be fine, but it does not. And they are not the narratives which tend to overwrite indigenous storytelling about sky and ground. He further adds, saying, this is a problem for everyone, not just indigenous people. It indeed threatens our grasp of the past. When it comes to the insights into our remote ancestors, the remnants of prehistoric storytelling, a few and precious tales as it is within indigenous storytelling about the stars. And a dream time. The author further says it is increasingly clear that belief in alien visitation is no longer just a fun speculation, but something that has real and damaging consequences, and so we need to be very careful, as we don't need to be skeptics to believe in non-existent verities, but let us be cautious and careful about how we take it all in. Certainly, we are not alone in a vast universe, but we need to have an absolute proof of life elsewhere in whatever format, shape, or size in any given planet or solar system around the universe, let alone our own galaxy. Certainly, we do not condemn anybody who believes that there is life elsewhere, because it would be wrong to say there is no life elsewhere other than Earth, and it is equally wrong to claim that there is life elsewhere in the universe. We do not know. Earth life is proven to us. We know everything as much as we need to know, and life evolves in a planet like the one we occupy, and we are not denying the existence of planets that may exist elsewhere. Maybe light years away, maybe they have also invented ways of traveling, and until we have a connection, we have no proof whether they are visiting us or not, whether they exist in our imaginations or not, although imagination points to the fact that there has to be something that can be imagined. Then I will say, let us wait for the day in which our dreams may come true, when we meet those so-called aliens who may look like us and show us what is there in their world and what they have discovered about ours. Variety of new religions or religious movements, including some branches of Theosophy, Scientology, Realism Society, and Heaven's Gate, believe in ancient and present-day contact with extraterrestrial intelligence. Many of those see both ancient scriptures and recent revelations is connected with the actions of aliens from other planetary places. Psychologists have found that 4 major world religions have similarities in which it's suggested that members of these groups consciously or even subliminally associate enchantment with this science fiction. The scientists consider consensus in which the ancient astronaut hypothesis is not impossible, but unjustified and probably even unnecessary. The mysteries cited have the evidence for the hypotheses which can be explained without having to evoke an ancient astronaut or proponents to look for mysteries where nothing exists. Since ancient astronauts are unnecessary, Occam's razor should be applied, and the hypotheses rejected according to the scientific consensus. The ancient Sumerian myth of Enuma Elish, inscribed on cuneiform tablets and part of the library of Ashurbanipal, says humankind was created to serve gods, called the Anunnaki. How those proponents believe that the Anunnaki were aliens who came to Earth to mine gold for their own use? According to the hypothesis proponents, the Anunnaki realized mining gold was taking its toll on their race, and then created the human race as slaves. Lulu Amelu. In the Bible, the book of Genesis and the book of Enoch mention similar stories, perhaps as copied from. The book of Genesis, chapter 6, verses 1 and 2 and 4 states, "When human beings began to increase in numbers on the earth, and the daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of humans were beautiful, and they married any of them they chose." The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God went to the daughters of humans and had children by them. Many Christians consider these groups to be of the different families of Adam and Eve's children. Another interpretation is that the Nephilim were the children of the sons of God and daughters of humans, although those claims are uncertain. The King James Version of the Bible translates Nephilim as giants. Ancient astronaut proponents argued that Adam and Eve ate of the forbidden fruit in order to be godlike, and this was the first step in human evolution. The first part of the book of Enoch expands and interprets Genesis 6. The sons of God were a group of 200 angels called Watchers, who descended to earth to breed with humans. Their offspring were Nephilim, giants who consumed all the acquisitions of men. When humans could no longer sustain the Nephilim, they turned against humanity. The Watchers also instructed humans in metallurgy and metalworking, cosmetics, sorcery, astrology, astronomy, and meteorology. God then ordered the Watchers to be imprisoned in the ground and created the great flood to rid of them the earth and of the humans who were given knowledge by the Watchers. To ensure humanity's survival, Noah forewarned them of the oncoming destruction. Because they disobeyed God, the book describes the Watchers as the fallen angels. Ancient astronaut proponents argue that this story is a historical account of mysterious people visiting Earth, called the Watchers, because their mission was to observe humanity. Some of the excerpted materials show that they disobeyed orders and made contact with humans, crossbred with human females, and shared knowledge with them. The Nephilim were thus half human and half extraterrestrial hybrids. The book of Ezekiel. Chapter 1 of the book recounts a vision in which Ezekiel sees an immense cloud that contains fire and emits lightning and brilliant light. Within the cloud, as the passage describes, cherubim and ophanim. And in the fire was what looked like 4 living creatures. In appearance, they were most human, but each of them had 4 faces and 4 wings. Their legs were straight, their feet were like those of a calf, and gleamed like burnished bronze. Under their wings and their 4 sides that had human hands. All 4 of them had faces and wings, and the wings of one touched the wings of another. Each one went straight ahead. They did not turn as they moved. As I looked at the living creatures, I saw a wheel on the ground beside each creature with its 4 faces. This was the appearance and structure of the wheels. There was a sparkle on the top, and all 4 looked alike. Each appeared to be made like a wheel intersecting a wheel. As they moved, they would go in one of the 4 directions the creatures faced. The wheels did not change direction as the creatures went. Their rims were high and awesome, and all 4 rims were full of eyes all around. When the living creatures moved, the wheels beside them moved, and when the living creatures rose from the ground, the wheels also rose. That brings me to the subject of a few people that I have known in the past, and who have been questioning me about my unusual experiences, especially after reading them in my book titled My Life of Dreams, Dreams of Life. Indeed, I had experiences with extraterrestrial beings from elsewhere, but I cannot and would not claim that they were absolutely physical or physical experiences. I also had experiences in regard to near-death or out-of-the-body experiences, awareness, which I cannot vouch for as if they were absolutely realistic or physical experiences for me, as I have studied the workings of the mind and the science of clinical psychology, neurobiology, and particularly psychiatry. This enabled me to understand the functions of the brain, which can create hallucinations under certain circumstances as studied in this discipline of science. I have learned that the chemical reactions and electrical functions within the brain, images can be made to appear very real. And we can also create artificially, that is, the situations virtually creating the experience of out of the body by applying certain technologies to actual human brain, by making the patient wear inducers. Consider. My own experiences have been extremely realistic, and I cannot deny them. One particular experience I had with my ex-wife while living in Hobart, Tasmania, when we both have been ushered into a UAP and taken onto a short flight towards the moon, during which a number of interesting subjects were spoken of. After being returned to our front door, my partner, who was a much dedicated Jehovah's Witness, chastised me about her supposedly shared dreams with me, being inspired of the evil devils due to my interest in things of psychological kind. The whole issue was like a hallucination of a science fictional sort. During the actual experience, at least, it was very real. But after much research and study, it became more and more like a dream, or even an entertaining daydream for myself. Today, I will call it as the shared dream, and nothing more. We will talk about that in a different time, more in detail. But for now, let's stop this session here. Until we meet you again here by the next episode. Keep smiling and be happy. Thank you.